Welcome back to Lawfully Chaotic Studios after a 3-month hiatus?
Yeah, I know, right?
Long time, yeah. I am Brian Weiss of RPG and Company, back with my new co-host, Jason Baldrick of the TTRPG Academy, one of the
I feel
best.
like our studios are so similar. It looks like I'm putting my head right on your lap.
I know, right? I got to get some of your fake candles, though. I like that effect. I got too
Fake?
much of the
Fuck.
corporate.
Oh, I thought they were real. My bad. My bad.
But everybody, give a welcome to Jason, one of the awesome. That's now a word. Awesomest DMs out there. His game productions are just fantastic. So, anyway, thank you for joining me on the show, giving me the kick in the ass that I needed to get it back
Heck
to
yeah.
life. We are back. We're going to try to do Friday nights, and the format is the same. We're just going to shoot the shit about game stuff. I don't think we really don't have a starting topic tonight. So,
Well,
if
I mean, I'm saying a really good starting topic for tonight is the reason why we should use the 2-minute waiting thing is because of the lag. You know, Twitch lag and all.
oh yeah, to get people to show up, yeah,
Well,
yoo-hoo!
not even that. It's like, those announcements and stuff. Because it's funny because by the time it's like 2 minutes for us,
Uh-huh.
I just get my alert that, Lawfully Chaotic just went live.
Well, let's see announcements. Okay, we'll do it now. I'll make up some announcements. I'm on number 9 of 10 special movie-themed homebrew magic items that I've been working on this week, and I've actually managed to get one out every day, like I said I was going to do. So I got those up there. You probably recognize a bunch of them from some 80s movies and whatnot, but those are really fun.
Yeah, I love those. I keep seeing those on the Instagram feed.
Yeah.
And then my jealousy like immediately begins to like be obvious. Super gel.
I think when I hit 50, I may think about publishing it hard copy and additionally digital. But I got to get those out there.
Yeah, those are a lot of fun. I mean, it's always a challenge when you can't. How shall we say? You can't find the right items when your players are searching for items
of specific like types.
Yeah, like cool, like really cool, like epic relics.
Yeah.
Like level 10 through 15. It's always a challenge. For sure. So,
and I like if you've read through any of them, I like really convoluted magic items. Like kind of the more complicated the better, in my opinion. And I always throw you can use this, but and it's really powerful, but you may suffer some ill effects. I just think it's kind of fun. But I have a ton of fun doing them. When I set out to do the 10 of them, I had like 4 of the ideas, and then I'm racking my brain for the other 6. But it's funny because it just pops into my head, a new one, and I'm like, boom, okay, now I got to do this in the next 15 minutes. So. But I love when my players love them. I hand them out. Oh, hey, we have somebody in the chat. It's TTRPG Academy.
Hey, and this is like one of those sessions too that I want to use it to kind of test a few things first.
Oh, we have somebody. Jenny AGW9.
Yeah,
awesome.
Hey, Jen. How are you doing, Kai? She was in my Forgotten Realms Faerun Reborn campaign that ran for about 2 years. We wrapped up. I think, about 2 months ago now, a month and a half ago or something like that. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. So thanks for joining us.
I noticed that when I try to host you on my plat, it doesn't show up.
Okay, that's probably a setting on my end.
Yeah, there's probably setting on your end.
Yeah. So also, Adam Scott, when we were doing this together, hey, there he is. Hey, Adam, what's up, man? I was just speak of the devil. Your ears must have been burning. I was just going to say that Adam was the producer. So the first couple of new shows may be a little bit rough as I'm doing the producing. And also Adam had a real knack for eliciting answers from me. So we'll see how this goes also with me as the the host.
So
So
true.
yeah.
So true.
So blurt out the sleepy producer. We need to get these guys in here with some stuff. Adam, you need to join us again at some point. It's been ages, man.
Heck yeah.
All right, so what should we talk about? What should we at least pretend to start off Drow? That's the topic. We're talking about Drow.
Well, it's funny because recently 2 of my campaigns have started to dabble in the world of oh, word. Wow,
Drow was supposed to be word.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. There you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you both, Jenny and Adam. Thank you both very much for joining us here at the Lonely reintroduction of episode 9 of Lawfully Chaotic.
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you. Oh, so it's funny that he typed Drow because like two of my pay to play tables just recently did a realization within the Illithid world, right? The Underdark world, where these I don't really like to use villains, or I mean, I usually kind of work in terms of protagonist and antagonist these days, or nefarious. I find it much more interesting.
How about morally challenged?
Well, yeah, because I mean that's both sides of the street when it comes down to that realization, for sure. But what's really interesting is I recently tapped into the old Underdark background because I wanted people to experience the way I've been redeveloping the Underdark. I kind of treat the Underdark like a refugee crisis, where in most of the worlds that I place it in, it's collapsed in on itself, both economically and environmentally, because of the way the Duergar, the Drow, the mind flayers, and the idea of overconsumption of the Underdark. There's only so much you can take from the earth before it wants it all back. So, a lot of times I'll do like cataclysmic events have occurred.
I think I saw a movie about this once. It was called Avatar.
Yeah. Well, Avatar, what's the 20, oh God, what is it called?
Jenny says her first character ever was a Drow. That's awesome.
Well, and what's really cool, what you can do, Bri, is in the comment section as people are typing, you can click on them and it'll show you what they say.
Yep.
And I use that all the time.
Boom. There you go.
And that way you can kind of show everybody topics and things that we're working on. It's weird not having team control because I run through StreamYard so much. I'm going to go click on buttons and nothing works. It's crazy.
It's great for people who are blind like us old guys, right?
Oh, heck yeah.
So we're both wearing beanies tonight, but you have a full head of glorious white hair. Where Adam and I used to always joke that it was the bald bearded guys. It was, well, dude, anything.
I can make it look totally bougie if I do it.
Look who you're talking to, though. But Adam and I used to always joke that it was the bald bearded guys club when we got on.
The only cool part about white hair is it makes your fake suntan look great. Right? I mean, I just look either like I'm in a very warm room, which kind of I am, because all the women in my life that run their offices out here, they want it like 110 degrees.
Well, plus you have the fake candles behind you that are heating things up.
Yeah. But no, like I've always liked toying with the idea of the Illithid lore. It's, the Underdark lore, and what does it mean? And the fact that there's an entire ecosystem and like an overall lineage lore that exists in the fact that it never sees the light of day. And and what does that mean to a group that's grown up generationally like that, and how does it affect their perspective on the above world? And so a lot of times lately I've been having the Underdark collapse in on itself and create the opportunity of, okay, the Underdark is now suffered a traumatic event. They become nefarious out of needing to survive. Right. So when you create that condition, boom, it changes the dynamic of everybody's approach, right? So are
Mm-hmm.
all Duergar bad? Are all Drow bad? One could easily argue that all Illithids are supposed to be bad. The real
Mm-hmm.
question of the day is, to what degree?
Well, and
I
it
mean,
also goes down to point of view. So here we have a pertinent topic, and we discussed this on some earlier episodes also about, especially in today's world, stereotyping a whole race within the game as they're evil. And I think that's one of the really awesome things that Matt Mercer's done is they are. Adam says they are bad. Change my mind. um, well, have you ever been invited over to a Drow's house for dinner? I mean, you can't judge until you've spent some time with them. But I love what he did with,
with Essek
yes, with
and the
Essek and
whole
Jorhas.
Zorhashian, yeah,
Yep,
Jorhas,
yep,
yeah.
yep. Hey, Barry Bot, how are you? Thank you for joining us. Yeah, no, it's interesting because it's point of view, and actually, I think it would be really cool to play. I mean, everything is set from the point of view of the overworld, right? And the underworld is part of it. Well, to your point, what if the point of view was squarely set in the Underdark, and that was your civilization, and that's what you are familiar with, and then the overworld, everything else is what is antagonistic or alien to you, which could be a really cool, so there's Illiton's family thing, which could be a really cool way to run a campaign world, like completely flipping the point of view.
So about 20 years ago, I came up with
Mm-hmm.
the idea of building a humanoid non-human world. In other words, what would it be like for an entire series of humanoid lineages to come into existence where humans don't exist? What is that going to mean to their overall kind of reality? What does that look like from their perspective? Like,
Mm-hmm.
to a certain degree, it was inspired by the idea of indigenous community. In other words,
Mm-hmm.
the entire Western Hemisphere was chugging along in their own cultural development for thousands of years. The apex predatory reality of exploration, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
if in the fantasy world you have this amazing world developed with all these amazing humanoid lineages that don't include humans?
Right.
And I started building that many years ago, and then recently Callista, my partner in crime, inspired me to get it going. So I started building my own world called Kalisha. I built its
Mm-hmm.
first continent called Luna Verde, and I've been developing it now for maybe a month. And it was supposed to be part of one of the games called Absent Throne, but we ran into some hiccups with that group, and then it's probably gonna have to reboot and restart with a different
Mm-hmm.
reality later on. So,
Yeah, it's a
but
cool
it happened.
it's a cool approach to it though. I definitely am I definitely am of the mindset. I like the fact that people are starting to play now in the style where different races are not automatically bad.
Right.
Like Estros in the latest campaign. He's an orc warrior who happens to be their benefactor, which is really cool because it's still novel enough to where it's a little bit different. Um, but it's a cool way to run a game, in my opinion, rather than every goblin you meet is a bad guy, every orc you meet is a bad guy, kill him instantly type thing.
Well, what's even worse is when good guys are bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I the Monday game I'm building, I'm doing something really different because I kind of feel like at this point in the gaming spectrum of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll probably do a couple other topics in the future about the idea of core systems versus integrated core systems, the availability of different types of tabletop gaming and role play gaming in general. I mean, one of the things that's gotten really popular is like Zomboid. People have built these incredible role-playing MMO servers where they do the auditory role play while playing, a digital space. It's a very traditional RPG approach.
Yeah.
But from a tabletop RPG perspective and from a, D&D perspective, I've always wanted to get rid of leveling, and I've always wanted to get rid of classes to a certain degree. Because to me, leveling and classing is kind of like that last bit of railing that if we can get rid of it, then you can truly finally kind of unleash the RP theater that people have been really craving.
Did you ever play well, so Jenny says, or no, Adam says, I'd love to play in the Underdark. So two things. So one, it's interesting. I don't remember who posted it, but somebody posted a meme on Instagram. Hey, DJ Winto Fresh, nice to join us. Thank you. It's funny because it was like an old senior woman with a walker, and she's like, back in my day, D&D was always in dungeons. And then there was a younger girl next to her like, that's good, Grandma, let's get back to the home now. And I thought of that, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like I can't remember the last time I actually just did a dungeon delve, and was like, okay, you need to go to the Underdark to retrieve, X. And you're down there for 4, 5, 6 sessions.
Well, I mean, and that's the other thing I've been kind of, since we started with the Drow, and I grew up at the time of Drizzt Do'Urden and the whole kind of anti-hero evolution that went through, and the rise of the anti-hero evolution of like Dark Sun, and the idea that being a member of the X generation, we always believed ourselves to be anti-heroes anyways. So I think being rooted in predetermined antagonistic lineage and then developing something counterculture to that is always so much more creatively more fun. I can be a lot more creative in a preconceived dark space or evil space than I can in like, the Greyhawk world of, religion, right? Because it's easy to portray zealots because we have so many zealots in real life. It's not that hard. It's really hard to portray, somebody deep in a very evil empire who is desperately trying to change the ways of their evil empire. That's a lot harder to do.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. In response to your saying that you want to get rid of leveling and classes.
Oh yeah. So from a railing.
So
you know what, Adam? I might tell the world about how often you. Never mind. I won't say it. Won't say it. I'm gonna high road it.
Did you ever play Middle Earth role playing system?
I did for a bit.
Okay, that they still had classes there.
Sorry, that's what DJ was referring to. The old Chronicles of Amber RPG.
Okay. Okay.
That's a good example.
Well, MERP was similar in that it still had levels, but it had a much more robust skill system, and everything, weapons, armor, everything, if I remember correctly, was based on skill. So you could have, like Gandalf, you could have a mage that was a sword wielder. It's just you needed to put some focus and some of your resources into building up sword play, as a mage, which would obviously take away some, from your core build. But what it did is it made it really, it was much easier to have like a unique character, and it also used a 100 system. Percentile die system. So there was a lot bigger range also. But I kind of think that's a cool idea. I agree with you. If it was a little bit more, you're building a series of skills and that is what affects your overall character rather than saying, I'm a paladin or I'm a cleric. You can be a priestly healer who likes to beat the shit out of people, and it's just based on how you allocate skill points.
So I did an example for the players, right? So I wrote an example Yeah, a lot more like
Yes.
Skyrim in the sense
Yes.
that that yours in a sense that your class, your feats, and your lineage abilities become guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are just
Yes.
guidelines.
Yes. Rather
So
than a box that you're stuck within.
right. So the way the Monday night game is going to go is I told everybody to write their character story, not their backstory,
Mm-hmm.
but the story that is their character. And then that's what they're going to play. They won't be level 1 or any level. They won't be a specific class. They're free to use any influences they want to write their story. And then
Okay.
that's the character they bring to the table.
And
Then
this
at
is
the
5e
end,
rules.
kind of, it's 5e. So it's 5e core. And what I
Okay.
mean by 5e core is the DC system.
Okay.
Because the 5e core, and I will, apostate this forever, the 5e core is very much designed for narrative DMs like me.
Mm-hmm.
I can literally run any theme I want from low to sci-fi. I can run anything with the 5e core.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give a really good example. Any theme you run, you may require a medicine check. Now, regardless of the theme you're running, there could be influences on that check. Like in
Mm-hmm.
low fantasy, maybe you have an herb pack that gives you advantage. In sci-fi fantasy, you may have a stim
Yep.
injector
Yep.
that gives you advantage, right? So the core of 5e is this really, really altruistic creation called difficulty check. And it gives the narrative DM a way to benchmark difficulty by just looking at the environment and saying, okay, I can either tell you what the DC is or I could keep it secret. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
up to the table to decide what they want for their level of immersion. But with that in mind, as we play this open world game on our Monday one, it's so open world that when we finally do a milestone, it's not for the purposes of leveling. Shannon, who took some time off for my Debtor's Gambit game, plays a Mage the Ascension game, and she plays a new 5 edition that they wrote themselves. And there was one piece of it that I fell in love with. Whenever they would go up in skills, they didn't call it leveling, they called it going up in skills. They would have their characters reflect on everything they had done up to that point, and then they'd write their own skill.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, maybe this goblin who's never been skilled with a shield spent 4 or 5 sessions with that shield
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly says, I kind of feel like I've mastered that shield. And I kind of feel like whenever I have that shield with me, it can give me full coverage because of my small size.
Mm-hmm.
And then we write that custom ability out for that player. And then the team kind of decides, yeah, that makes sense because of what you did during that one session. Oh, remember when you used it as, a sled during that one session? That was really
Mm-hmm.
fun. So that way, when you do have your milestone sessions, you haven't already pre-generated in your mind what you want. What you're doing is you're self-reflecting on how you've been playing,
Mm-hmm.
and you use that self-reflection to garner your own ability to customize your own skills and feats and abilities that you share with the table, and they're either going to agree or disagree with you. So the table's kind of all milestoning together,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all codifying their story together. The hardest part, and me and Adam talk about this all the time, and sometimes some of my other players, we talk about it. Sometimes the hardest part is coming up with a reason why the party should like each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that because whenever I start a campaign with a new group, even if only for my benefit, I have to have the backstory of how they are together. I can't stand everybody's in a tavern and you see a mysterious guy in the corner. Um, a lot of my campaigns do start out in a tavern, and the group
Right.
sees a mysterious guy in the corner. But there always needs to be a reason why these characters were together, and it kind of goes towards that direction of your backstory. It sounds a little bit like why I created my homebrew rules for an extended skill expertise system, just to kind of get a little bit more unique. I didn't delve outside of the leveling model. But I created a skill expertise system whereby kind of the same thing. If you, as a player, if your character is, if he spends a lot of time cooking and tries to make, you know, meals that are have a healing ability or whatever, then we're going to make a skill based on that, and it will be, you know, it will be very specific um, in terms of when you can apply it. But when you do apply it, it's going to reflect the fact that that is a part of your character story, and something that sets you apart from everybody else. So,
Well, and that's why it was so refreshing to see Tasha's Cauldron,
yeah, yeah.
because it finally codified a lot of things that I've been doing over the decades with,
Mm-hmm.
you know, oh, you want to own your own ceramic store within the game? Perfect. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great way for you to earn passive gold while you're out adventuring.
Yeah.
You want to be a tanner or a blacksmith or a tinkerer. You know, you want to go train at the local military academy so you can improve your strength. I've always used those things, but I never really thought that they were necessary things to create as focal points. I just
Mm-hmm.
assumed that everybody was following the number one rule of the game,
Mm-hmm.
which was use everything as guidelines.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that was my assumption.
that's yeah. Well, it can be, that could be a rare thing, a very rare thing.
Right? I mean, it's like, oh, guidelines.
Well, it's like the rule, you know, it's like, are you by the book or are you rule of cool? You know, I very much
I'm a little bit of everything.
Same,
But
same. I definitely use the rules, but there is a point at which the rules always go out the window if it is narratively interesting, or, you know, if it's going to cause the game to slow down a lot. So yeah, you definitely have to use them as guides.
Well, and I think the hardest part, well, there's a lot of hard parts, but one of the more difficult challenges that you have, right, is, you know, when you get that table going of any gaming system that you're running, right? D&D is one of the more prolific gaming systems.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the nature of what it is. It's got a lot of content. It's got a lot of individual creators. It's got a lot of platform creators. It's probably the largest creative side hustle in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Millions and millions of people consume it. And it's kind of cool when you consume the curation space of the small community
Mm-hmm.
than the corporate community, right? It
Yeah.
becomes cool when you can sit down and say, hey, you know, did you hear about this guy who's selling these modules out front? He hand writes
Mm-hmm.
them on tissue paper, and, you know, as soon as it disintegrates, the story goes away forever. So you better, you know, that becomes cool because it's counterculture, you know, and you don't want these big monolithic, like, you know, 10,000 page dungeons that who in their right mind in the medieval world would commission someone to build a 10,000 room dungeon.
Well, that just blows my latest idea out of the water, because I was on page 9,812. So thanks a lot for that.
Don't get me wrong.
Now that goes in the circular file. No, I'm just kidding.
And I love a good dungeon delve when it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when it kind of makes sense, you know. It's like, oh, you're on your way to the big city and you can see a rune with a staircase leading down, just like out in the middle of it. And they're like, okay, obviously you want us to go there. And they go, but we're going to keep going.
Mm-hmm. A sinkhole appears in front of you and you fall into the earth.
I crawl out and keep going to the capital city.
You die. Your legs fall off and you're dragged back into the hole.
And that's why I fell in love with, you know, the idea that they, you know, the milestone system was cool.
Mm-hmm.
The rule of cool is always a lot more fun, in my opinion.
Do you use milestone?
Yeah.
Exclusively.
I even used it when I didn't realize it was milestone. Like I used it, like,
you know,
like decades ago, I got rid of those XP tables.
It's funny because I think I started using it just because I was too lazy to assign XP. But now, like, I there's no way I would go back to XP. It's just, again, it's better narratively, you know.
Well, what's funny is, you know, as we talk about this, like we started off with, okay, Drow being a lineage of bad, right? Talking about the overall mechanics of railing, talking about, see, all these topics, sure, they're D&D intended, but if you look at a lot of the mechanical systems out there or the rule systems out there, there's Cortex, right? There's GURPS.
Mm-hmm.
There's Mage. There's Vampire the Masquerade. There's a lot of these systems that follow the same fundamentals of all core systems. And that is, how do we create a pace that's amicable to a table of friends or strangers to play a game together
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't get bogged down in their self-indulgent mechanic?
Mm-hmm.
And probably a lot of people used to play the old school rules wouldn't agree with me, and I'm okay with that because that's the context that it's in. But I got rid of almost 90% of the tables and charts in first and second edition D&D because I was spending hours building something that they didn't have to do. I was, in a sense, traveling down the road of self-indulgence and telling
Mm-hmm.
myself, because I've built this, I'm going to force them to do it. And that was my narrative between 9 and 13 years old. When I started playing at 9, I went by the rules as written. I
Mm-hmm.
codified it. And I was like, okay, guys, nope, can't do that. You got to do it this. I was building my voice around the idea of the rule. But by the time I hit 12 and I was frustrated with the tables I was getting, I was like, you know what? I got to be self-reflective and I got to change. There's something about my process that I don't like. And that's probably coming through to the other players. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I began to shift to a more narrative process. So the very first thing I did narratively is I got rid of all those stupid XP tables.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I got rid of that, suddenly instead of having 6 fighters at the table, I had a monk, I had a fighter, I had a cleric, I had a thief, I had a wizard.
Yeah.
Suddenly I was getting a better mix because they were like, oh, okay, so you got rid of XP. Does that mean we just level up at the end of every day or every session we play? I'm like, no, we'll come up with a way. Maybe we'll bake it into the story somehow. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we'll have you go to a local university academy or a patron, and that patron, we narrate out, that patron kind of does something for you, and boom, you're a new level. And I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't calling it milestone. I wasn't calling it anything. I was just
Yeah.
like, okay, today we level up during this session. How do you guys want to do it? And they'll all look at me and go, what do you mean? I said, well, you were level 4 last session. I really felt like that 8-hour game we played should have gotten you to level 5. So let's talk about how you got to level 5 and play it out in the game. And they're like, oh, okay, that sounds really cool, man. Let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, the rule
I
of
think
cool
you
began to take over.
Yeah, I do think you have to have some kind of advancement though, because that
Oh,
is, that's
definitely.
what keeps people going as a player. It's funny, I find myself personally, like so in 40 years of playing D&D, I have never had a level 20th character. In fact, 15 is my highest level character I've ever had. That's my current one.
Nice.
And it's funny because I think the most fun levels are from like 3 to 7 ish, you know. Um,
Well, that's a whole
and
topic by itself. And one of these days
well,
we'll
I,
do a whole
I
topic on
I know it
leveling
is.
by
I know.
itself.
But when you do get to a certain point, it's like you've got so many different abilities and stuff. It does become less about the leveling. I'm I so as a play, do you ever play anymore? No.
Very
Okay.
rarely. Right now, the only game I'm in is our Star Wars game on Thursdays.
Okay.
But that's meant to be a very short game, and Enigma's going to want to cycle in new players.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's probably going to last a couple more months, and then by the summertime, he'll want to get a new one going, or he'll take a
Gotcha.
break. Because Enigma is a very kind of traditional, GM where, if he's inspired, he writes a game, he invites people to play, we play it, and then we either TPK or we finish it out. And
Mm-hmm.
he got all of us Star Wars nerds together, and he was like, "Hey, you like Star Wars, don't you?" I go, "Please." My very first movie I saw in theater was Star Wars. So yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
I love Star Wars, and that's what, we did. But I never played D&D. I'm always the storyteller. I'm just
That's funny.
always the
I
one
mean,
running it.
so the past few years, I have also been heavy on the DM side. When I was growing up, I don't think I ever really DM'd for the first half of the time that I was playing.
Mm-hmm.
But as a player, as a character, I'm kind of always motivated by magic items. So I'd rather get some good
As
loot
my
than.
girlfriend always says, "Loot the bodies, loot the bodies, loot the
Oh my
bodies,
God,
roll
yeah.
the bodies, roll the
Yeah,
bodies, loot the
we
bodies."
spent a couple sessions ago. I had my group. They defeated. We were playing Rise of Tiamat, and they defeated one of the dragons. And we had an entire session, 3 hour session of just rolling on magic item tables, the whole 3 hours, and they fucking loved it. It was hilarious. And then
Well,
there was some wheeling and dealing with an NPC on what items they would get to keep and which ones she would take. But it was pretty funny because it was literally 3 hours of like a night at the casino rolling for magic.
yeah, well, it's like when I was cutting my teeth on building games, the very first DM's guide or the first expansion of the DM's guide, the one that, created the whole, religious community uproar with the big devil on the top in the front of
Mm-hmm.
it. Half that book was dedicated to just rolling dice to build a dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Roll D100 for this and this and this,
Yeah.
and this encounter gets placed there. So you could roll dice all day long and build a dungeon and then run your players through that dungeon.
Yep.
And because I've always cut my teeth on Keep of the Borderlands, the first 3 years of my life was dungeon, dungeon, dungeon. Everything was about the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Forgotten Realms was popular. Greyhawk was popular. Dark Sun was getting popular. There was all these new ways of approaching the game that didn't require just like a traditional D&D or a dungeon, right? And one of the things that's always been fascinating to me about the title of Dungeons and Dragons is it actually goes against the nature of titling something. They titled the game something you rarely do anymore.
Well, and that was that meme. I like that idea, the magic magpie that can thank you. I'd like to see that link. That would be awesome. And I think that was the impetus for that meme that somebody posted. It's like, D&D used to be about D&D. Now it's like, these deep narratives and you're embroiled in politics and this and that, which is awesome. But it's funny because I thought about that the other day after I saw that. I'm like, yeah, it's been so long since it's just been like a dungeon crawl. You
Mm-hmm.
you gotta get to the center of this dungeon and recover item X and then get the hell out alive.
Yep.
So it's kind of funny that you're right. It's titled something and it's gotten so far away from that.
Well, and the only time it ever deviated from that title was AD&D when it went Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So,
Mm-hmm.
according to the club scene, right, the club of all of us nerds that would get together at the local store or the local friend's house or the local clubhouse somewhere on a school campus or the library, we were playing this game, but it was codified between the AD&D crowd and the first edition crowd,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the schism of the versioning is not new. The overall schism of which version you enjoy playing has been around since Arneson and Gygax used to argue all the time about the game.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, if you haven't done it yet, there are a lot of interesting biographies and autobiographies out there on Arneson and Gygax's relationship.
Uh-huh.
Not every curator's not every creator's a perfect curator.
Right.
Let me just it's the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
He is the founding individual of an amazing game, along with a lot of other founders that built out this amazing game. But you could go back to Napoleonic era content and Napoleonic era information about these huge groups of people and their officer staff that used to play sand table military tactical games.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of gamification of people getting together and solving a problem, it's not new under any stretch of the imagination. What's new is the tools we use or the medium that we're in or the narrative that we're borrowing to kind of bring those pop culture realities to it and kind of give everybody that feel like it's unique for that table at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the history of this game. The history of this game is just so neat.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Yeah. Let me switch gears a little bit. Because I know that you, when you run games, you use Tailspire, right?
Correct.
Which, for those that don't know, is an online digital tool for mapping and characters, 3D isometric view, very very customizable. Um, what is your? Well, I mean, I know your bias since you use it, but what is your view on a digital platform like that versus a table with terrain and minis and cameras set up that way?
Well,
Hey, it's
hey,
Brian. Hey,
bearded
Brian,
nerd,
what's going on, man?
what's going on there? I call him the BN1,
The BN.
the bearded nerd.
Yes. How you doing,
um,
bud? Thanks for joining us.
I actually
So, what is
have
your?
I kind of have a very simple view when it comes to tools, and it's dirty. It's gonna
By the way,
surprise everybody.
this may be
Go ahead.
rehashing some old topics that Adam and I discussed, but it's been so long, and and I discussed them with him. I haven't discussed them with you, so for anything that is a rehash, I apologize, but it can still lead to other views and whatnot. So,
Oh heck yeah! Well, and I think my golden rule about the tools that you use, as
mm-hmm,
long as they don't inhibit your pacing and the table is having fun,
mm-hmm,
then use what you're using.
gotcha.
Then use what you're using. That's always the golden rule you should follow. If
Mm-hmm,
you have a table of 5 or 6 people or an online table of 5 or 6 people, and whether your live platform or your online platform, whatever you're using, if your pacing feels excellent and the table's having fun, then run with what you got. That means it's working. Your confidence is working. You're comfortable. You don't feel angst, and you don't openly show that it's hard to run the game, right?
so
However,
you
if you're
don't necessarily go ahead.
however, if you're struggling with your pacing and you're
Mm-hmm.
frustrated with your tools, I will say if you're in an online environment, Tailspire takes a lot of that frustration away.
Okay.
It just does.
So
And
it's
that's
not
why I went
necessarily
with it.
so it is a mechanical and streamline issue for you
Yeah,
mostly.
and to be fair, my platform is also a live battle cam that I use
Mm-hmm.
on the tabletop.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 2 tools I can use so that when we're doing kind of immersive casual encounters, I use Tailspire because it's super easy to build. It's
Mm-hmm.
super easy to put together an interesting immersion field or board that
Uh-huh.
everybody can use to kind of get their brain into the immersion. But if I'm doing like a big boss or we're at a
Mm-hmm.
milestone point or this is like a major encounter that needs the detail of a battle cam, then
Mm-hmm.
I set up my battle cam, I set up the traditional terrain,
Okay.
and then I have the battle cam for that.
Cool.
And I
And
keep
I've
it
and I've
simple to
and
my
I
pacing.
and I've experienced in your Debtor's Gambit campaign
Mhm.
on Sunday. I've experienced how you switch between the two and have different scenes set up,
Oh yeah, we're gonna have fun this Sunday
which is really very cool.
because Omni won't be around to stop the bar fight.
Oh, that's right. We all split up. Forgot about
I got
that.
I got one person over at the Cobalt Soul. I got Gathard and Keth over, trying to buy charts and maps and figure out what's going on. And then I got you and DJ and Omni over at the old Kiss at the tavern. And I love how you guys were just I know you and DJ weren't, but I really love how Jin's character and Omni's character and Gatharn's character. Well, Jin and Omni were expecting like this real like, oh, it's a big city. This is so warm and fuzzy. This is so cool,
Mm-hmm.
And the city's like, fuck you guys. We're all starving to death. This guild master is nearly trashing the entire Menagerie Coast, and it's chaos everywhere. And you want us to be happy that you're here? I just love that nuance. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah,
So when you
Sunday's gonna
run
be
your
interesting.
games, what's your platform you like to use?
I still okay now. Again, I run a couple games. Okay, a couple games a week. I have my standing Wednesday game through D&D Club. Set up through Adam.
Right.
I've got some friends an adult game, but friends from my son's school. We play maybe once every 2 weeks.
That's
And
actually pretty
then
good for that age group.
uh, once every 2 weeks is maybe it's once a month, once every three,
Yeah.
anywhere
Yeah.
between once every 2 weeks and once a month.
Gotcha.
But
That's
they're
still
pretty.
pretty damn good.
It is, yeah, and it's awesome because so two of them I know, it's a couple that I know from school, and they're really good friends. And then everybody else are friends of theirs, and they all went to college together, and they all studied some form of theater.
Mm.
So, and a lot of them, a few of them had never played. Few of them had not played in 20 years. But man, I got to tell you, when we started up, it was they just like fell into it. Like the role playing was fantastic, as you can
That's
imagine.
awesome.
Yeah. Um, but anyway, to get back to your answer your question, I still default to terrain and minis and a table cam, a battle cam that way. Mostly because I have not had the time yet to dive into Tailspire. I've tried Roll 20, not as a DM but as a player. But the consensus around the table was, I don't know if I should say this, but it sucked.
Yeah.
Sorry, Roll 20.
Yeah.
It's really buggy. So I have not delved into Tailspire yet. From what I saw from you using it, it looks amazing. So I'm definitely going to explore that. But I'm Foundry. I've never played. I haven't used Foundry.
My son has used Foundry, and the only reason that's one of the few that I'm a fan of is it's a standalone purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So you just buy it and you use use the sharing services to
Okay.
pull people directly into it. And
Okay.
I've seen the stuff that my son has built, and I like it more than Roll 20.
Yeah.
I do like it more than Roll 20. But I mean, there's Astral, there's there's Albert Rodeo, Albert Rodeo or something like that. There's so many of them out there that are trying to find that perfect balance of
Mm-hmm.
pace,
Yeah.
usability,
Yes.
and how much prep you need to use to get it going. Because sometimes the danger of these tools is that as a newer DM or a DM that's insistent that the work needs to be shared regardless of its use or need,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you're playing and using it all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly you're doing a narrative session and you have Roll 20 up. Albert Rodeo, yeah, that's the one. So suddenly, instead of focusing on learning the basics like theater of the mind, doing
Right.
some simplistic encounters at first until you can gauge the table's needs or wants in regards
Mm-hmm.
to what tool you should be using or what tool the table should be using, you've got to be a little cautious about that. You don't want to immediately like force every single session this Roll 20, because
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, so what's going to be the surprise to the session if I'm getting all of the bells and whistles every time I show up?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the pacing? Where's the where's
Well,
the
not only that, but then you learn the as a DM specifically, not so much as a player, but as a DM, you then learn the art of being a DM within the bounds of that platform, which may not be
right?
a good thing, you know.
Well,
So I still, I mean, it could be good and bad, but I see that as when you rely on a tool too much, and this
becomes a
happens
crutch.
often. Yeah, this happens often in graphic design. Um, I
Yeah,
still
Photoshop is what everybody should be using.
right. No, you should be using a pencil and a sketch pad. Yeah, the old guy is suggesting pencil and paper to concept because you're constrained by the tool itself sometimes, and it
Mm.
it kind of hamstring it has the potential to hamstring the creative process. And I think kind of the same thing. Once you know what style you prefer and works for you, then you find a tool that fits that.
And
So
never be
I just
afraid to try a different tool from time to
no,
time.
of
You never
course not.
know.
Of
It's
course
like
not.
maybe Roll20 will work for you in certain situations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe using your phone with the Droid application on your computer as a
Mm-hmm.
battle cam is a great way for you to start experimenting with using your terrain on a little foldable table.
Yeah.
Maybe there's all these little nuanced tools. Like I was having a great conversation with one of the D&D club DMs, Sean, MDM or Medium,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about all the different things that StreamYard, which we use for our presentation and our private gaming,
Mm-hmm.
um, this idea of creating a 5-minute villain monologue video that you play for your players, right? So you
That's
like,
cool.
and as you guys enter into the church, you hear this, and then you play the video.
Uh-huh.
And then there's like this villainous video of this guy like going on, and so I see that you have found where I have been hiding for so many generations. Come, feast upon your doom.
Let me explain my dastardly plan, which will
Right?
give you time to figure out how to defeat me.
Because that's
I
more cool
slowly
than a
put
monologuing bad guy.
as I put you into this incredibly slow dipping machine. So anyway, I still haven't answered your question. I tend to, well, not tend. I still use. Hang on. Oh my goodness, what is going on here?
Playing with your dials is what you do.
No, every once in a while, my camera control just decides to start doing whatever it wants to.
And DJ Winto, me and Sean were having some really good conversations.
There we go.
One of the things I love about a lot of the newer professional DMs coming out is they're theater majors or acting majors, or they have this amazing background in really understanding how they can bring those skill sets to the table. And then they learn this balance of its use. It's just amazing to me. And I have yet to watch Sean play, and I really want to. Yeah, monologue is the key, baby.
Yeah,
that's the key to every successful big bad.
It is, yeah. I still default to table and terrain and minis, mostly because I'm a huge nerd when it comes to minis. Okay, I fucking love minis. I know I'm looking back there.
Yeah, baby.
So really, I just mostly nice. Mine's downstairs. Hold on, let me. How do I? Oh, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I love using minis. So to me, it's just like I love using physical dice. I mean, the dice roller for D&D Beyond is fantastic, but I still like using physical dice. And I tell my players,
my main impetus for the longest time of using D&D Beyond was because I was a traveling DM. And so it became, became a lot easier for me to run my games at the brewery or run a game over at a game shop. So pre-COVID,
what's the matter? You don't like schlepping around your wheeled carry-on suitcase of like D&D shit?
I could give you some 1992 nightmare stories about going to go play the game at a shop and your entire trunk of your car is filled with everything. But it was so nice to be able to roll into the brewery with a small box of potential minis to use
and a laptop,
a small box of potential terrain to use, and then the folded up cardstock terrain so that I could have at least some kind of immersion based map ready to go. But as we all went into lockdown and we all isolated, right, suddenly the flurry of other digital spectrums started to come out. All the Patreon based digital 2-dimensional tabletops where you take your TV and set it flat, and then suddenly that becomes your map. And then all the immersive ways that your online game, which is now the fastest growing space, because suddenly you have access to millions of people.
That would be my dream setup, by the way. It would have to be in person for obvious reasons, but my dream setup is, the 65-inch TV flat screen laid out on a table, and your maps are digital, but it's supplemented with terrain pieces and minis and whatnot. I think
And
that
I've
would.
done that before.
Have you?
Yeah, I've done that before. And I used to have a TV at the brewery that they let me use. And we
Okay.
had this big space, and then we'd have 7 people playing. The TV would be flat, and I would
Hmm.
put miniatures and terrain on the TV.
That's awesome.
And it was cool because you'd actually have this running river
Hmm.
going through, but I was using a couple pieces of hill terrain for the upper
Right.
dimension, and then
Right.
everybody had their minis that they were using for the interactive,
And then
process.
every once in a while, you just spatter some beer on somebody for the waves
Oh my
splashing
god,
out.
that brewery loved us because our bill at the end of every night was always like $300-400.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And my goal would be to find a brewery near me, in Temecula and Menifee and Murrieta, where I'm at,
Hmm.
that hopefully would want to team up with me and figure out a way to make that happen again. Because as we come out of this, and assuming we don't see mushroom clouds in the background,
Hmm.
as we come out of this, it'd be nice to start doing some more of those public games that I used to do.
Oh,
Because
absolutely. Yeah.
because one of our next topics that we can talk about next time we're on is I want to talk about the idea of the stranger table
Hmm.
versus the friend and family table. I think that's a really reticent
Episode.
challenge for, well, not only that, but it's really reticent for anybody playing any game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think if you're a creator in the overall gaming space,
Hmm.
I think the more games that you can build and create to those kind of spectrums of reality, I
Hmm.
think you could really build some really cool games.
I like that idea. In fact,
You
so in
know,
episode 10 of Lawfully Chaotic, we now have our episode 10. We will start out. The topic will be strangers versus, close group of friends playing. That could lead to
no
a
kidding.
lot of interesting play.
Holy
Um,
crap! Yeah, we
I
gotta
know
we
that's
gotta
an
wrap it
hour.
up. It's almost 6 o'clock.
I
It's already been an
know.
hour,
I know.
and
That went fast.
do you know how to raid? Do you have the ability to raid?
I don't. Let's talk about that for next.
Cool, because
For
you've got 10
next.
people on right now.
Okay.
So in the future, we apologize. If you haven't followed us yet, please do.
Yes.
Me and Brian will be here every Friday night for an hour for starters to talk about all things gaming, all things related to gaming. There's always going to be an emphasis on D&D because it's kind of our dominant sphere. But we're
Hmm.
going to talk about Cortex and Mage and building homebrew rules and the idea of the creator space and what are the creators doing out there when it comes to fostering play and fostering game activity. So, come back here in a week and we'll have some more topics for everybody. Other than that,
I will
Brian.
increase my my producer skills, so as to make it more engaging for everybody. But yeah, we have a lot. Actually, we have a lot of stuff planned, and this is going to kind of be the jumping off point for a lot of it. A lot of it has to do, as Jason mentioned, with the creator space and getting content published, not just ours, but that of the community.
Yeah, we're
So
really going
that's
to
something we'll
delve
talk
in.
about.
Yeah, and what I'd
Yeah.
love for you to do, because you're so in tune with it, go out in that community space and pick a topic out there
Yep.
and say, okay, Jason, I found this out there. What do you think?
Yeah.
And then as
We're gonna
creators, we
do.
could talk about that community because I
Yep.
love doing that.
Yeah, we're gonna do a lot of that. We're gonna have guests on. We're gonna talk about. I'll touch upon some branding. I know, a big part of this community is uh, the creative abilities of a lot of people and setting up businesses. So we'll talk about some of that. So basically everything. And as usual, follow us. If you've got some ideas for topics you'd like to hear, certainly, shoot them out to us. Otherwise, thank you for joining us, Jason. Thank you for taking this on with me to.
And at TTRPG Academy, we will be running a one shot in half an hour, a level 10
Awesome.
one shot. I've got a full house. I might end up having 7 people tonight.
Are you
Which will
streaming
be
that?
yeah, we'll be streaming that over
Okay.
at TTRPG Academy. So
All right.
pop on over there, give that a watch, check it out.
Yeah, check it out because watching Jason's DM'd games, streamed games is really awesome. So.
Oh, stop.
All All right, awesome. Then we will see you next week. Keep it real, everyone.
Give us a follow. We got to get that, we got to get that affiliate process started. So all the follows help, all the love helps. Reach out to your communities and give us some love and support out there. We'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Peace.
Peace out, everybody. Bye.